When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
But they can't leave those kids alone because a lot of them have some serious behavioral difficulties or learning issues. New statistics showing that 1 in 2 students present a behavioral difficulty in class, a number that seems to be overwhelming teachers in Quebec who say they're suffering in the classroom. I took a great interest into one story from this week, and it was in Journal de Montréal. And one of the reasons why it caught my attention, there was a graphic in the story of a quote-unquote typical example of what a teacher in the province is facing. And they showed the 24 seats in a classroom and how half of them had some sort of issue, right? Learning issue or behavioral issue. But many have come to question what constitutes behavioral difficulties and whether or not we're overdiagnosing kids nowadays when their behavior might have been deemed perfectly normal a few decades ago. With more on this, let's go inside the classroom with Catherine Hogan, a high school teacher at Westwood Senior High. Catherine, thanks for coming on with us this morning. First things first, what's happening in your classrooms, right? So I brought up that example that Journal brought up of one typical classroom here. Is that what you see when you look in front of a classroom of 24 students or 24 students? Do you see half, or you're like, geez, we have some issues here?
Yes, absolutely. And I wish I had a class of 24, Elias. Most of my classes are 30, 31, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And yes, this is not an overdiagnosis. This is absolutely exactly what we're seeing in the classrooms right now.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because there's behavioral issues, there's learning difficulties in that, and then it comes down to you to manage that while teaching everybody, right? So how do you handle it?
Well, listen, the pandemic has definitely exacerbated all kinds of problems in the classroom. Students that were strong have remained strong, but those with learning delays and behavioral problems have increased, and it's worse right now. And I would say definitely it's not uncommon for a third or even up to a half of the kids in your classes having learning difficulties or social maladjustments. So it's made work in the classroom very difficult. Full integration in the classroom and years of cuts to public education have just created a vicious cycle that's really coming to a head right now with a lack of services to meet the needs that we have in our classes.
Okay, so Catherine, let me go back in time for myself 2 decades, okay?
Yes.
When I'm in the high school classroom.
Right.
And I remember that, I looked around the class and there were the kids that, weren't the best behaved kids. And you had the kids that, I don't know if they would have been deemed as having learning difficulties at the time, but that were slower, let's say, when it comes to doing the homework and doing the exercises. That it sort of seems like every classroom was like that. Now you say so. Do you think that's now we're diagnosing these things properly? That's the difference?
No, I think it's much, much worse now. When I look around at classes that I was a student in, and then in my early teaching career, small behavior management issues, that was the norm back then. Now it's major trouble in the classrooms and behavioral issues that are causing crises for a lot of these kids in classes. And that's becoming more the norm in every single classroom. The management can be absolutely almost impossible with the level of difficulties that are present in every class. Really, if you look around at each class, you might have 4 or 5 motivated students that are really succeeding, but even they are suffering from classes full of behavioral disruptions now. It's not the same as it was when we were students, and it's not the same as it was even 5-6 years ago in my career.
So, I mean, I know you brought up pandemic, and that's a recent phenomenon here, but I'm just thinking, what could lead to so much change on that end in less than a generation?
Well, the learning delays caused by the pandemic are for sure very real, Elias, very real. We're seeing that across the board in every grade level. But we're also, parenting has changed quite a lot. There's not a lot of discipline that's happening at home, so the kids are quite reckless at school. There's, change just in the way that teenagers and students function these days, the way they speak to their teachers, the way they speak to their parents, the way they speak to administration. It's not the same. There's an underlying feeling that they should be able to say exactly what they feel all the time. They should be able to express themselves. And so that's very difficult in a group of 26 sometimes.
So, Catherine, what are solutions here? I mean, well, what you're outlining here seems like, okay, insurmountable, let's just give up.
It does feel that way sometimes, and that's why we're seeing a mass exodus in teachers, and that's why we're facing a big crisis in terms of people coming into the profession and retention of teachers in the profession. That is what we're really experiencing on the ground, is that teachers with 25 years of experience are saying they've never seen anything like this. This is the way to every teacher that you speak to. We are at a critical point where we're saying we have never seen classes like this, and how do we proceed going forward? It'll be interesting to see as the springtime comes when we enter into negotiations again for the upcoming contracts, because the number one thing that teachers are going to be looking for is a reduction in the class in terms of special needs, in terms of behavioral cases, and just resources being available for these students.
And on the resources there, do we need more support staff, and do we need perhaps, to take some of these students out of the regular classroom and give them a more personalized or a different type of experience in schools?
Yes. I think that's going to be the key, although that's not what most of the school boards believe. They believe in full integration in every classroom situation, and I'm just not really sure that that's manageable anymore, but I'm also not sure that it's good for anyone. I don't think it's good for the struggling students who need much more one-on-one attention in a non-disruptive environment. I don't think it's good for our strong students who are losing valuable education time because of behavioral disruptions. And I don't think it's great for the kids that are causing the behavioral disruptions, because they're not getting the education that they need either. And unfortunately, sort of all three groups are suffering in the way that classes are composed right now.
It just, it seems as we talk, Catherine, here, that so many of the issues we're talking about, we start off with the classroom here, but it seems like the problem is societal, It's
a mix, Elias, absolutely. It's a compounding problem with all the different sort of social areas all coming together at a head right now.
Catherine, just one thing that I'm thinking of, and this comes from discussions we've had on this program this week, and I've had with friends this week. In Quebec, we've got our public system. We've got a private school system that can be heavily subsidized, so it's not that expensive, and I know that's a relative term, or $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Then we've got the fully private schools; they can charge $25,000 a year.
Right.
Do you think that the fact that we've got this mid-tier that's not too expensive for a lot of parents takes some of those students out of the public system and exacerbates a problem when it comes to a mix of a classroom with students that are high performers and those who aren't?
Sure. Yes, I do, actually, because, you do need the strong students to help kind of lead the class and set the tone a little bit. And those students are becoming only, 3, 4 in a class now, where it used to be that those kids were 17, 18 in your class numbers. So, yeah, I do think that it's pulling students away. And I think that that's sad, because I am an advocate for public education, and I would rather see the public system improved and the students being educated there in a way that's helpful for everybody instead of, 3 separate tiers.
Catherine, we'll leave it there. I want to thank you for coming on this morning. Appreciate it.
A pleasure, Elias.
Catherine Hogan's high school teacher at Westwood Senior High in Hudson.